welcome to another Math Literacy Initiative Math Help Day. Today we're going to work on fractions. So the guiding question is, what is a fraction? So with what is a fraction, we're going to talk, and remember, I'd like to use these times on Wednesday afternoons to really help whoever is working with the child. So if you're a caregiver, a parent, a grandparent, whatever, a sibling, a friend, I know a lot of you are working at home with little ones now, and so I'd really like to just be able to help you out. So the things that we do, I'm going to go kind of fast. That's just for the adult learner that I'm working with right now. So if you have any questions about what we're doing also, like about how you want to provide questions for your students or what kinds of questions they ask your students, I'll be saying it throughout the session, but also if you want to send a question in via Facebook, we can respond to it immediately on our live stream. So let's think for the moment about what is a fraction. So fractions frustrate a lot of people. I think fractions are our friends. But fractions, sometimes when you write it, people just kind of freeze up. And so why is that? What is a fraction? So let's talk about it. If we have something that looks like this, and we know how to read this, it's read because we're adults. So this is, the kids haven't seen something like this. So as an adult, we remember that this is 1/4 or 1 out of 4 or a quarter. There's all kinds of things that we say when we see this notation. But what is this notation? What does it mean? What does this notation mean? This is what usually people get stuck on when they work with fractions, it's the notation. So let's talk first about why kids would be frustrated with this kind of notation. So if you think about it, what are the components of this notation? We have a 1, so kids are pretty comfortable with 1. They know that it means a single unit. And when these things are introduced, which is like 3rd grade, 4th grade, we know that they probably know the number 1, so a single unit. And we have the number 4, and they know what 4 means. 4 means, if you ask them what number 4 means, they might draw 4 things or hold up 4 fingers, but they have a good firm understanding by 3rd grade, 4th grade about the number 4. So, but then there's this thing that goes in the middle. So let's think about what a student, how they might connect to that particular notation. So far we have a 1, we have a 4, and we have this line. So let's think about it. So we know what we've experienced. So kids that are talking about things like this, when they've experienced a line that looks like this, up until this point, it needs subtraction. They usually see lines like this in the middle of a number sentence, and it means subtraction. So now we're saying, this line means something different now. So we're changing the rules up a little bit. So that's what gets kind of frustrating to some people. It's like if you don't speak a particular language and you go into an immersion classroom and they just start saying it, we don't really know what it is until you use it, and then we can learn that word. So it's the same kind of thing with fraction notation. We're going to use it, but let's talk a little bit about what these terms mean. So we have something that looks like this, and we know, well, again, I'm talking to the adults, so we know that this is called the denominator. Sorry, that is absolutely wrong. This is called the numerator, and this is called the denominator. So those are really big words too. So we're talking again like 2nd, 3rd, 4th graders. These are pretty long words. So let's talk instead about what these words mean. So we have this idea here of num, which we can think of as number, which tells us a quantity. So it gives us some quantity of something. So some quantity of what? So, some quantity of something with this nom. So, nom is like a name. So, what's it called? So, if we think about it like that, the num this thing is a noom. This noom tells us the quantity of something, how many of them we have, and this one tells us what that thing is. So this tells us what the thing looks like, so it's a 4. So now we have, but this is why kids get confused with this kind of stuff, because now we're saying, okay, well this does mean 4, there is part of 4 that's still there, but this tells us how many pieces there are, or what the name of that piece is. So if we have 4 pieces, 1, 2, 3, 4, here are 4 pieces, so this gives us this name right here. And this tells us how many of those we include. So this is breaking down the notation and the vocabulary for fractions. So this is, again, I just wanted to share this with you because we need to understand why students struggle with stuff before we can attack the actual problem. So the struggle comes from the notation. So let's think about how we can think of the notation differently to introduce this kind of thing to kids. So if your child is in 3rd grade, 4th grade, they've probably seen this notation before, but have not had this kind of substantive discussion about what it means. So let's go back to now, okay, what do we do with this thing? So again, I'm going kind of fast. When I do something like this is like a week's worth of work. Like work with your kids for several days on this. You don't just slap it up like I do and move on after 5 minutes. So let's think a little bit more about what can we do with these fractions. How can we learn more about fractions? So sometimes we combine fractions. So we're going to talk a little bit about how you can get your student to think about fractions and combining fractions using the idea of the name and the number of the fraction that we're going to think about. So I'm going to erase. If you have any questions as I'm going along, please submit them so that I can respond in real time to you. So I'm fine with stopping and responding in real time. So if you'd like to do that, please do. So now let's think of something. Let's think about, let's just think about something that we're going to look at an analogy for mathematics. Analogies are nice to use in math as much as you can. So this is supposed to be a shirt. So here's a shirt. And this is a pair of pants. So we have this shirt and we have a pair of pants. If I wanted to add them together, so combine these two things, we could call it shirt pant if we wanted. No one would know what we're talking about because there's no such thing as a shirt pant. But we could also call it, we could name it something else so we understand what it means. So what's another thing that we could change these into so that we can combine them and it makes sense? So what do you do when you combine a shirt and a pant? We have one outfit. So if we call it something else, if we name it something differently, then we can, it changes the rules a little bit so we can combine them together. So we're going to use this idea with our fractions. So the same thing, let's say you have an apple, and we're going to add that to, this is an orange. So when we add an apple and an orange, there's no name. I mean, an orangeal or something, we could make up some name, but it doesn't really make sense. So we would have to figure out, okay, how can we combine these two things so that it makes sense? Well, we could say pieces of fruit. Because fruit makes sense. This is a piece of fruit, this is a piece of fruit. So we can combine them to make something new that really keeps them together as what they are. It doesn't change what the apple is and what the orange is, but now we have something to call it all together. So you might be saying, why are we talking about outfits and fruit? But again, the idea is to talk about something that makes sense to students first and then bridge it over into the fraction. So if we want, let's use the same kind of principle and add 1/4 and 1/3. So let's think about what that means. So if we wanted a 4th, and I'm going to use some construction paper. You can use whatever paper you want if you want to fold, but paper folding is a really good tool to use when you're talking about fractions. So I'm going to use 2 pieces of construction paper. This one is, we've folded it into halves. Now I'm gonna fold it into fourths, so a half of a half is a fourth, so I'm gonna just fold it one more time. So we have this. And if you open it then you have 4 columns. So they're all going vertical. So here's our 4 columns of 4. And then I have this red, and I'm gonna fold this into thirds. So thirds are a little bit harder. It's easy, but better if you can kind of line them up because you want them to be about the same size. So we're gonna fold this into thirds. So we have, now if you think about the nom and num, so we have how many pieces, so the numerator is how many that so this one they want one, we want to demonstrate 1, and the nom or the name is fourth, so we have 4 pieces. So we want 1 of those. So I have another green paper that I folded in half and cut already, and I'm going to fold it in half again to make our 1/4. And again, you can use any size paper as long as it's the same. So the 2 pieces, the initial one has to be the same. All right, so we have 1 of these. So that's what we're going to add, 1 of these. And a third. So we have 1 of these. And here's the third. So this, I got this third by, I folded this so that we have 3 equal pieces. And here we have it. So now, let's go back. So we have this pink piece of paper, same size. Let me prove it to you. So it's the same size as the green one. And it's the same size as the red one. And then I took 1 of my 4ths. I'm going to put that right onto this pink paper. So this hole, this is called the hole. Put that right on there, and then put this right on there. So it's kind of like your shirt and pants. We have 2 different things, or your apple and orange, 2 different things. But we want to combine them together. In order to combine them together, we have to know what to call it, right? It's kind of like it's a, I don't know, red-green or red or something. So you can make up a word to combine them. But we really need to know what does this mean, because we want to find out the fractional part of the pink then that this is. So let's look at it. So we have 1/4. So let's demonstrate our 1/4. I'm going to do exactly what I did when I folded the paper. Make the lines vertical just exactly like I did when I folded the paper. So we have 1/4. And then we have a third. I'm going to put that one in our green, our third. Okay. So let's talk about this again. When you work with your student, you want to stop after each of these pieces and just have a discussion. So we could talk, if you did this with your student at home, you could have a conversation about, well, you think it's more or less than a half. If you think it's more than less than a half, let them just play with it for a little. More than less or less than a half. And then how could they prove it? So you want them, once they give you a response, you want them to prove it to you or justify it, we call it math. So what's a way for them to prove whether it's more or less than a half? Well, we could take another piece of paper, and again, you want them to figure it out. Don't tell them unless they're stumped. And stumped means for several minutes not doing anything. So we could take this and look at a half. So I'm going to just fold that in half and see, well, it looks like it's going to be just a smidge over a half. So a little bit over a half. So we need to remember that for when we do the problem. So we know that our response should be a little more than a half. And it's because we actually proved it with our concrete models. That's what the paper is. Okay, so let's look at this. So we don't know what to call it with the green and the red, and the 4 and the 3. So we have to change it somehow so that it's this, we're talking about the same thing, so that we do have a name to call it. So what I'm going to do is I'll take this one and I'm going to split this one into thirds going this way. So if you think about it, this is a third, a third, a third. And then I'm going to take this one, and what do you think we'll do with this one? We're going to split it into 4, just like this one is. So now, why? Why do we do that? So always ask the why questions. Even when you're teaching, especially when you're teaching, ask the why questions. So, why did we do this? Well, let's look at what we have now in this fraction. So what is the numerator and what is the denominator? So num, remember, is how many of them. So let's see how many. We have 1, 2, 3. And nom is the name of the piece. So how can we, what do we call this piece? It's out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So now we have this 3 twelfths. So we know it makes sense. There's how many that are colored. That's how many pieces there are together. So now let's think of the same thing. What's the num of this one? 2, 3, 4. And what's the name of the pieces? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So now we have 3 twelfths and 4 twelfths. So I'm going to add these together. So that would be like, let's look back at our example. So that would be like taking this apple and doing whatever we need to do with it to make it just a fruit. So we didn't, it's always going to be the fruit, it's always going to be an apple, but we just have it in a different form. So this is always going to be 1/4. So this is 1/4 if you just think of the green, but now we've changed its name. So instead of 1/4, it's 3 twelfths. We didn't color in anything extra, we didn't change what was colored, it stays the same, but now we have a name. So now we can call it 12s. And if we call it 12s, then we can add it together. So it's kind of like having, now we have 3 of these new things, 12s we call them, and then we have 4 of these new things, 12s that we call them. So how many do we have altogether? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7, and what's the name of that piece? So the name of the piece comes from just one whole. This is one whole, this is another whole. So it comes from just the one whole and 12. So this is how we get to, this is called finding common denominators. But finding common denominators, this sounds all messy and mathy. And so let's figure out, we just need to name it something differently so that that process can happen. So let's try a couple more of these. So I'm going to do some and then hopefully you can do them at home and see what you come up with. Folding paper is a good idea for quite a while when you're working with kids. So don't try to steer away from the folding paper too quickly. It gives them a nice concrete model for your fractions. So let's try this one. All right. Oh, we forgot to do one other thing. So we said that this should be a little more than a half. So we need to know how to figure out what a little more than a half is. Well, if we have 12 pieces, so we have a 3 here, 3 by 4 here, that's 12 pieces, then half of that 12 pieces would be right here, right? So how much is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 twelfths is exactly 1/2. That means 7 twelfths is a smidge over, and that's what we got. So good for us. All right. So now we have 1/5. Now let me just teach you how to fold the 5s, because 5s are not really that fun. So you want a column in the middle, and we're doing, this is by hand. So because it's by hand, it'll be just a little off maybe, but it's kind of like doing experiments in math. So whenever humans are involved with it, it can be a little off. So we want it to be as close to a 5th as possible. You can also use your, if you have a ruler at home. So here's our 5ths. We have this, And then we have another third.
You fold it like a paper fan.
Fold it like a what?
Paper fan.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, paper fan. That's a really good idea. So here's our third. So now, let's make an estimate of what we think the answer is going to be. Is it going to be more or less than a half? So we have 1/5. Here's our 1/5. And a 1/3. Ooh, that's pretty close, pretty close. Here's our half. Let's see. So it looks like it might be a smidge over, but we'll see. So that's our guess first. Alright, so we have 1/5. And one of them, so Noom and Nom, one of them, and how many are there? 5, so its name is 5. And then 2/3. Okay, let's add these two things together. So we don't have a name for it right now, just like before. So how do we figure out its name? So, let's see. If we split this into 3 parts, let's split this into 3 parts. And let's see what we have here now. So we have 1, 2, 3. That's the Noom. So we have 3. And how many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there's 3 rows, so that's 15. Alright, so we're going to add that to. Now let's take this one and split it into 5s. And why are we splitting it into 5s again? We want to have a name for the fraction. We need to know what to call it. So we didn't change what was colored in at all. Again, let's remember, we didn't change what is there, what the shaded part is. We just changed what we call it. That's it, just so that we can call it something and blend these two things together. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And there's 15 altogether. So now we have 3 of these things, these 15 things, and we're adding it to 10 of these 15 things. So that gives us 13 of these 15 things. So let's look at that. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yeah, we have that. And a hole. Remember, these are 2 holes. They're not all the way filled in, but that hole has 15 parts in it. So now let's think about this. So is it more or less than a half? So if we have 15, oops, and a little too small, a little too fast. Let's see. If we have 15, then that means we have 14 lines. There's 1, and then let's put 7 on each side. All right, so half of it. So if this whole thing is 15, what's right smack dab in the middle? So we want to know what half of that 15 is. Well, we could put, if we think of it in terms of 14, there's 7 on this side and 7 on this side, and then there's this 1 in the middle. So anything over 7 and 1/8 15th is going to be over half. So we know that we're over half. We're quite a bit over half, actually. So we're a little off on our folding. So, are there any questions? Do you have any questions? All right. We can continue on with fractions next week if you'd like to do some fractions, or if there's something else that's coming up, we can do that. So please share your questions with us so we have topics for each week. And if you have any questions about how you can use these ideas in a lesson for your kids, please post them on our Facebook page, because we have a lot of interns that are watching, teachers that are watching, and people who have done a lot of this kind of work. So A lot of teachers around this region have used the Outdoor Project pedagogy, and we'd love to be able to share it with you. So please feel welcome. Okay, have a great day. Maybe we'll see you next Wednesday at 1 o'clock.